So let me begin by giving you a definition. An arithmetic sequence is a list of numbers where each new term is found by either adding or subtracting something from the previous term. Okay, so let me give you a quick example. Let's say that we have a sequence that starts with the number 7. Okay, and let's say that our sequence is found by adding 5. That's going to be what we're going to do to get each of our new terms. So if our first term is a 7, then the second term we're going to say to ourselves 7 plus 5, and that's going to give me my next term. And then I'm going to add 5 again. 12 plus 5, that's going to give me 17. I'm going to add 5 again. 17 plus 5 is going to give me 22, and so forth. Okay, so that's an arithmetic sequence. We started with 7 and we added the same number repeatedly to get the next terms. All right, so let's look at a couple of examples. We're going to be given the first 3 terms of the sequence and we want to find the next 3. All right, so what we have to do here is when we look at this first sequence that begins with 4 and the second term is 7, we have to ask ourselves, how did we get from 4 to 7? Well, we added something because we're increasing. So what did we add? 4 plus what is going to give me 7? And so we know that that's 3. 4 plus 3 is 7. And let's do the same thing going from the second term to the third term. So how do we get from 7 to 10? 7 plus 3 is going to give me 10. So you can see that in between each of the terms, you're adding 3. So we're going to continue that pattern. So as we move from 10 to the next term, we're going to say 10 plus 3. Going to the next term, 13 plus 3. And then going to the next term, 16 plus 3. So once we decide what that pattern is, then we're going to do that for each of our terms. So that will help us complete the sequence. Okay, let's look at our second example. Second example, we start with a 5 and we go to a 12. So how did we go from 5 to 12? Again, we're going in an increasing fashion, so we know we're adding something. 5 plus what makes 12? Right, 5 plus 7 equals 12. All right, let's check it here. Does the same rule work? If I take 12 and I add 7, do I get 19? And I do. So I know now that to go from one term to the next in this sequence, I need to add 7. So let's do that. 19 plus 7. And use your calculator at any point when you need to do this. 19 plus 7 is going to give me 26. 26 plus 7 is going to give me 33. And 33 plus 7 is going to give me 40. Okay, for our last one, 25 is where we start, and then we drop down to 12. Well, if we're decreasing, we're going to be subtracting something. So we have to figure out, what did we subtract? 25 minus what gave me 12? So I know that 25 minus 13 is going to give me 12. Okay, now let's make sure that it also works going from the second term to the third term. So what I want to check is this also a difference of 13? So does 12 minus 13 equal -1? And it does. And again, if you need to plug it in your calculator, do that. Okay, so now we know that we're going to subtract 13 to move from one term to the next. So our next one is going to be, let's see, we're at -1. So I'm going to do -1 minus 13. Again, use your calculator if you need to see that that's -14. And then we're going to do -14 minus 13. That's going to give me negative 27. All right, and then our last one, we'll take the negative 27, we'll subtract the 13 again, and that's going to give me negative 40. And that will complete that sequence. So a lot of times when you're doing an arithmetic sequence, you are going to do exactly the same thing in between each of the terms. Like in the first one, we always added 3. In the second one, we always added 7. And in the last one, we always subtracted 13. Now, I want to show you a couple of other examples where that may not always be the case. All right, so look at this first one. We start with a term of 2 and then we go to 8. All right, so how do we get from 2 to 8? That's an increase, so that's going to be adding something. 2 plus 6 gives me 8. Okay, but now look at your next two terms. You're going to go from 8 to 4, which you're dropping down. You're doing a decrease, right? So that's going to be a minus something. So 8 minus what is 4? 8 minus 4 is going to give you 4. So notice that we didn't do the same thing there. We added 6 and then we subtracted 4. All right, so let's keep going. So what about from 4 to 10? Well, okay, so that's an increase, so that's going to be plus something. 4 plus what gives you 10? All right, 4 plus 6 gives you 10. So you see that it's starting to repeat that pattern. All right, what about here, going from 10 to 6? We're decreasing. 10 minus 4 gives me 6. All right, and then from 6 to 12, that's an increase. So that's going to be 6 plus 6 gives me 12. So you can see that pattern emerging, that you're adding 6 and then you're subtracting 4. You're adding 6, you're subtracting 4. You're still looking at an arithmetic sequence because you're finding the terms by adding or subtracting. Okay, so we're going to follow that pattern. So the next one will be a minus 4. So we're going to say 12, which is where we left off, minus 4, and that's going to give me 8 for my next term. Okay, remember that you're alternating here. So we're at 8. Our next one is going to be not minus 4, but plus 6, right? And 8 plus 6 is going to be 14. Okay, and then we're back to a minus 4. So I'm going to do 14 minus 4, and that's going to give me 10. Okay, so that completes that arithmetic sequence. All right, so let's try this last one. So we're starting at 5 and we're going down to 1. All right, so 5, how do we get to 1? We're going to subtract 4. Okay. All right, what about going from 1 to 9? That's going to be adding 8, right? 1 plus 8 is going to give you 9. Okay, how do you go from 9 to 5? Going from 9 to 5 is a decrease. 9 minus 4 equals 5. What about from 5 to 13? We're back at 5 plus 8 gives you 13. So again, you can see that pattern emerging. Minus 4 plus 8. Minus 4 plus 8. All right, what about from 13 to 9? Should be a minus 4, right? Does that work? 13 minus 4 is 9? Yes. All right, so let's go ahead and fill in the blanks for the other 3. Okay, so we are at 9, and our next thing is adding 8. So 9 plus 8 is going to be 17. And then we take the 17 and we subtract the 4. Remember, you're alternating between adding 8 and subtracting 4. So 17 minus 4 is 13. And then finally, we're back at the adding 8. So 13 plus 8 is 21. And that completes that sequence. So again, you can either do exactly the same thing on the terms like we saw in these examples where it was always the same thing, add 3 or add 7 or subtract 13. Or you can have something where you're looking at a pattern where you're adding or subtracting in a particular pattern to go from one term to the next.